All right, so welcome back. I hope that you still have the same energy, that you have enough fuel, because this is the last one for today. And of course, we have to go out with a bang. And so let me also say a special thank you for those of you who have stayed for today's session, not just for today, but those who were with us from since yesterday and who have continued to stay to hear the information. A special good evening as well to those joining us online, those who are looking at us on Facebook. Thank you so much for staying. It is my pleasure now to introduce a seasoned export coach, sourcing consultant for China and Asia, and a corporate trainer with over 11 years of experience as a leading sourcing specialist. She serves as the managing director of INVENI Business and Technology Limited, the Caribbean's premier China sourcing solutions company, which offers a comprehensive suite of services that simplify business dealings with factories and suppliers in China and Asia, ensuring top-notch products that enhance brand value and customer satisfaction. And what she's going to be talking about now is a masterclass, which is connecting the links, navigating the world of exports. So this session will provide entrepreneurs with assistance to become export ready, as well as to explore the world of exports. And so please help me to welcome Mrs. Michelle Lau Chu Tung, Managing Director of INVENI Business and Technology Limited. Let's welcome her as she comes.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Very happy to be part of this exciting conference. And I'm very, very happy this afternoon to share on exports. And more than that, I'm very happy that exports is being featured at an event for entrepreneurs so that you can begin focusing on the expansion of your business, utilizing exports as a growth strategy as you look at building out all your systems and processes as it pertains to ensuring that you achieve a successful business. So just bear with me, I'm going to just share my screen so that we can get started. Okay, great. So this afternoon we are talking about export readiness, and really truly trying to get you up to speed as it pertains to preparing your business for exports. So some of the topics that we'll be focusing on is, exporting, what is in it for you? And then, of course, looking at what is in it for you, we're going to talk about the benefits, but of course, like with anything else, as it relates to your business, we have to talk a bit about the challenges. And then there is a difference between exporting goods, physical product versus exporting a service. And I'm just going to touch a bit about that, because that in itself could be an entire presentation. And then the whole issue of how you're ready to export is going to be some key questions. And at the end of the discussion today, I do have an export readiness questionnaire that I will go through close to the end of the session that I hope that you will be passed on to you so that you can apply that questionnaire to your business, so it can help you determine as to where you are and what you need to do in terms of next steps in getting your business ready for exports. I'm going to touch a little bit in terms of exporting services. And then, like with anything else, how do you get there? And you need a roadmap that is going to guide you. And for exports, it's an export plan. So I'm going to try and get into the nitty-gritty in terms of some of that, and then we will summarize. And then, as I said before, share a bit in terms of the export readiness for the ERQ questionnaire, and then I'll take some questions. So I hope that is all right with you. So let's get into it. So exporting, and the question is, why would a company that's already doing well within Trinidad and Tobago consider becoming an exporter? There are many reasons why you would want to do this, because expanding and diversifying your markets is a great way for a business to actually grow. Another point is that Trinidad and Tobago has always been a trading nation. Exports and imports consistently account for about 2/3 of the country's GDP. and more companies in Trinidad and Tobago are actually joining the exporting arena in terms of exporting to regional and international markets and doing it well. Fact is, exporting allows exporters to boost their bottom line and build your competitiveness by selling to export markets. So if you are looking to export, you may have to ask yourself, is it worth it? And I'm here this afternoon to tell you, yes, it is worth it, because exporting can be one of the best ways to expand your business and grow your bottom line. So the question continues, what is in it for me? Why would I want to get involved in exporting? And you see a list of things there, a list of reasons why you would want to do that. And the first one touches on increased sales. Factors, if your domestic sales are good, exporting is a way to expand your market, find new markets for your product, and for you to take advantage of the demand within those new markets. Of course, higher profits is always going to be, the outcome of you exporting. So if you can cover your fixed costs through domestic operations or other types of financing, your export profits then can possibly grow very quickly. And then, of course, with exporting, there's opportunity for you to achieve economies of scale. Because when you have a larger market base, you can produce on a scale that lets you make the most of your resources. You also have the opportunity to reduce your vulnerability in that you are not solely focused on one market. So if there's any kind of economic downturn, and we know what we were coming out of in terms of the pandemic, if you were operating in other markets, maybe it may not have hit you as badly. If you're an existing business, you would have had other ways in which you could have ride out and become more resilient against those kinds of shocks that something like a pandemic would bring to you. With exporting, you have the opportunity to increase your knowledge and your experience, right? The global marketplace abounds with new ideas, approaches, and marketing techniques that could also help you prove your business to be successful in the local markets. And of course, you can achieve global competitiveness. The experience your company gains in an export market will help keep you competitive in your local market. And I want you to keep that in mind. And of course, in terms of domestic competitiveness, if your company succeeds in the global marketplace, and when I say global, I'm talking both regional and international, it will ensure your resilience to potential foreign competition in the local market. So we see from this slide that there are lots of benefits why you would want to focus on exporting and to start to build out your business in that way. In addition to that, if you're already exporting and maybe not consistently, this export readiness presentation may help to ask some really crucial or critical questions that would sort of guide you in the areas that you need to possibly ramp up your organization or your company to do better in terms of exporting. And as I said, with anything else, there is cause and effect. So there is benefits and there are going to be challenges in terms of exporting. I tell businesses all the time, exporting is a long game. You don't decide today that I want to export and you jump into the fray the next day and, you expect to just survive. Maybe there is a company out there or a few of them who have done it, but I know the ones who have planned for it are the ones who are most successful, the ones who have done the due diligence, the ones who have done the extensive market research that is required when you're considering getting into exports. They are the ones who are going to be there and survive and reap the benefits and the great returns on their investments in the long run. So exporting challenges, of course, where you can have increased revenues in terms of a benefit, you will definitely have increased costs. And that increased cost could come in the form of you having to modify your product, most likely, if not your product, possibly your packaging, as you sell to new markets. And that new market may be a market that has language barriers and cultural differences. And in order for you to be successful in that market, you have to pay attention to those things because the cultural nuances and so are very, very important. Your product has to be fulfilling the same need, I should say, excuse me, within the export market. So whatever pain points the customers have in the export market, you have to be able to solve those problems as well. So you have culturally, the cultural sensitivity must be there as it pertains to the market. Now we have this thing in Trinidad or regionally where we think that, you know, if I'm exporting to Grenada, it's the same thing, it's the same in terms of me exporting to, let's say, Jamaica. Two different markets, two different sizes in terms of market size. The way they do business could be different as well. And it is. Let me just be upfront with you and tell you that. You know, it takes longer for you to get into the Jamaican market versus you getting into the export market, into the Grenada market, which is a smaller market, which is where you can start first until you're ready to get into a market that is larger, let's say, in terms of Jamaica. However, Jamaica can be your first port of call if your product is specific to that particular market, and the market research points you in that direction. I'm not going to lie, the paperwork, you know, is a lot as it pertains to you preparing for the export market. And you need to have help in terms of the documentation. It means that you need to have, if you're a solopreneur and you don't have a team, you're an entrepreneur and you probably have a small team, there's certain figures within that team that you would probably need to build out or have access to or outsource to. And I'm talking about, you know, having access to an attorney, you know, legally, someone with the knowledge in terms of the potential export markets, having access to freight forwarders, customs broker, you know, even getting information from a risk perspective as it pertains to your banker. So even NEDCO, who is actually helping you in terms of getting loan financing to support your equipment needs, because now you are expanding into the market, greater demand for the product, you have to ramp up in terms of production. All right, so the cost is there. You also have to look at the level of commitment. I've said already that exporting is a long game and you have to be in it for the long haul. It takes time, it takes willingness, effort, and resources to establish and maintain yourself within the foreign market or the export markets. All right, so it's not just about you getting into the market, you have to be sustainable. So that is something that you have to seriously think about. You know, at times, and I've heard this a number of times, we have been receiving calls, or there is interest. You know, I think we've been getting a lot of calls that, you know, our product is needed in the UK, or it's needed in other markets regionally. And those types of calls basically sort of guide you into the area of there is export interest. That does not mean to say that you are ready for exports. It's two different things. So you need to ensure that you understand that, because there's so many things when it comes to you being ready for an export market, and I'm going to get into that shortly. So I mentioned before the language and cultural differences, which can be challenging. So you need to familiarize yourself with the differences in language and culture and business practices, so you don't inadvertently offend your potential customer base and possibly lose, you know, sales within the potential export market. So some key things, and then competition. The fact is you're going to have competition there too. And I tell entrepreneurs all the time, or even seasoned business owners as well, you know, what makes your product unique? What is it exactly? Do you know what makes your product unique? What gives you the advantage over, you know, a customer choosing your product versus, you know, someone else's? And you have to understand that. You have to understand that even better or more, or if you don't at this point, you need to understand that as you look at export markets. So because the competition is not going away. So you need to be doing a lot of things as it pertains to understanding the competitive landscape within the export market as well. And that comes back. Again, I'm going to mention market research. So let's continue on. Before I get into the export readiness part of it, I want to just stick up in here a minute and just talk a bit about the characteristics of an exporter. And from the slide, you can see it, right? The products and services are successful in the domestic markets. So when it's successful in the domestic markets, it could be that now with the interest that you're getting or have received, or you probably, reached out as well, you're seeing, okay, great. It seems as if the product could move into another market, but you are successful. So you're standing on some good legs. It's a good indicator. It is not the final answer to say, yes, we can move without a plan. It just it doesn't work that way. You have a solid domestic business plan and proven effectiveness. Specific advantages over the competition. What are the specific advantages over the competition in the local market that possibly could be transferred if the cultural landscape in the potential export market is possibly the same? Yeah, it doesn't mean that because the product works here, it's automatically going to work in the export market. So I want that distinction to be clear, right? Products or services are unique. I'm not going to say any more about that. I mentioned that in the slide before. Their products or services are competitively priced. So pricing is always going to be a factor in terms of how you position yourself in the new export market. And that does not mean that the price has to be cheap. The fact is you need to conduct the market research to understand what the pricing is in the export market. And then you have to do your work locally to see what the advantages are in terms of when you put that pricing together. Because when you put that pricing together, in most instances, it's not just the product you now have to look at. You have to factor in, if you're going to be utilizing a distributor, the cost in terms of maintaining that distributor relationship. And of course, the marketing and promotion of the product in the export market as well. So many things for you to think about. But these are some of the things, key characteristics as it pertains to exporters. So bear these things in mind. And now I just want to touch a bit in terms of exporting goods versus services as you look towards export markets. I really wanted to make this distinction. Exporting goods and exporting services present different challenges. The former must deal with packaging, customs, and a physical delivery because it's a physical product. It has to be transported to the export market via sea, via air freight. While the latter, in terms of a service which is intangible and which could also form part of a product in terms of after-sales service, you may require things in terms of work permits. Let's say you're an accountant, you are a consultant, you just do that type of work. It's not coming to me right now. And you have to get to the export market. A work permit could become an issue for you, right? Credential validation in terms of your certs and your certifications to operate within the market. Also, can you speak the language if you're going there physically? And even if you are doing the work online and the client is in the foreign market, do you have that ability in terms of speaking the language? And then, of course, travel to and from the market. That involves cost, yes, but you have to have the necessary visas and so for you to get to the market. So when exporting goods, it's also important to remember that there's often a service component, as I mentioned before, in that you could have a product, but the product probably requires installation. You could be also perhaps to provide training as well in terms of use of the product, and there probably is a warranty. Okay, the variety of services in international trade is quite broad, and a few categories include if you're providing business support, IT services, and computer education and training. Other services that you can provide would be tourism services, engineering services, financial services, which is huge. So all of these services can be exported. The services industry has been growing globally. It's a $1 billion industry, and it has become It has, really find itself in the spotlight, especially because of COVID. A lot is being done. You can do stuff digitally as well as in country in terms of the export markets, or it's a combination of both in terms of your operations. So moving on, are you ready to export? Are you ready to export? An export-ready business is one that has the capacity, the resources, and management to deliver a marketable product or service on a global scale at a competitive price. All right, with some understanding of the benefits and challenges that I just described as it relates to exporting, this question is apt, at this point. Um, I mentioned you receiving inquiries from potential customers overseas, it being just interest in your product. It's not saying that you're export ready. You have to ask the question, if you are a producer, if you're a manufacturer, do I have spare capacity? Can I service both my local market and an export market? Can I meet the demand in the export market? Those are the types of questions that you need to answer. And how competitive can my product be in the export market? The trick is to determine whether this is true of your company, and if it isn't, how to make it happen at the end of the day. So it's not just no, I'm not ready, and that's it. It's how do you make it happen? And as an entrepreneur, while exports is a long game, you are also in it for the long haul. You don't give up just like that. So we continue on. Factors, your first step is to think about the resources and knowledge your business already has. Consider the following as a starting point. What are your expectations? Do you have clear and achievable export objectives, or a realistic idea of what exporting entails and the timelines for results? An openness to new ways of doing business, an understanding of what is required to succeed in the international marketplace. Or, how do you treat with risk? Yeah, it's very, very important. That is something that you must take into consideration. And how do you reduce that risk as you get into the market? And one of the things that you need to do is that, you can start slow. You don't have to jump in, with both feet all at once, putting all of your eggs in one basket. So all of the funding that you've received, just immediately going after it. And then if you are not fully prepared and it doesn't work out, then what happens next? Right? You need to, if you're getting involved with a partner, an intermediary in that new market, you need to take time to understand that partner. You also need to conduct your due diligence. I spoke already about market research. The fact is, due diligence is something that you must do. So you understand the potential distributor or agent or joint venture partner within the markets. What is their brand reputation? How compatible are they with you as a company? You may be getting interest from a large company. You are a small company. Can you meet their demand consistently? You may be able to meet it at the very beginning, but then can you meet it consistently? All right. So start slow. Don't bite off too much more than you can chew. Do your homework, and that's where the due diligence comes in. What type of secure payment method would you use? Have you done that level of research as well in terms of how, you're going to have secure payments within the market? And as well as when something happens, as it pertains to not receiving, the customer not receiving goods, what is involved there? The fact is, you also need to establish a meaningful relationship with your partner. And that in itself takes time, but it starts from the very beginning in terms of how you work together and how much effort that you put into the relationship. It's not that, okay, I work hard to get the distributor, and now that the distributor is on board, I kind of rock back and expect everything to go well. No, 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 no. This is relationship building. So you have to continue with building that relationship, ensuring that the communication, excuse me, continues. Excuse me. So the next question is, in terms of, are you ready to export? We have to look within your human resource requirements within your business. What is your internal capacity? And even if you're operating with a very slim human resource capacity, as you look at the export market, you can then look at and see, the access to resources. That becomes very important. Please excuse me 1 second, please. I'm truly sorry. I've been battling the flu for the last couple of days. So, right. So, do you have the capacity to handle the extra demand associated with exporting? A very real question. And do you have the members on your team who are supportive of your export development agenda, the thrust that you want to make as it pertains to, getting into the world of exports? Do you have efficient ways in terms of how you respond to your customers? The personnel who are culturally sensitive in terms of the new market. Let's say you're getting into a market like Suriname, for instance. Yeah, and the ways that you want to deal with the language barriers. So do you have persons as well in terms who are experienced in terms of international marketing and in terms of market research as well? So these are some of the things that you have to consider as you look at the human resource requirements as it pertains to your business and exporting and getting ready to export. So I'm not going to spend too much time here because I just spoke about the human resource requirements, but it's generally the entire internal capacity of your company, not just in terms of personnel, but in terms of your equipment and machinery, in terms of your funding resources as well. Are there any environmental factors that you need to be aware of, in terms culturally, physically, in terms of, if let's say if you have a building or you're not currently operating, with a warehouse in mind, in order for you to fulfill the demand in the export market, you may have to start thinking of, in terms of production, where you're doing your storage. So just some key things that you have to bear in mind as you look ahead to exporting. Financial and legal resources. Can you obtain enough capital or lines of credit to produce the product or service for new orders? Very important. And this is a conference that's being hosted by NEDCO. So if I were you, and if you are a NEDCO client, it would be your next port of call once you have your business plan, and then your business plan, your export plan, which is an extension of your business plan, ready and prepared. You can take it into your NEDCO advisor, or if you have other bankers. And if you're not a NEDCO client, you may want to go in that direction as well, because NEDCO do provide financing as it pertains to equipment. So, I'm not sure if financing is provided in terms of raw materials, your packaging, your labor costs, and as I mentioned before, possibly warehousing. And then, of course, you also have to think in terms of marketing. So very, very important as you look at the financial and legal resources. Find ways to reduce your financial risk. And I went through some of those things a short while ago. Another aspect of things that you need to treat with is in terms of protecting your intellectual property. Yeah, it's not necessarily compulsory, but it's worth the consideration. It's worth you having a conversation with our local IPO office to just get a handle in terms of, if can I trademark my product, then, and also if you want to find out, what happens with my product or my brand in the export markets, just to get familiar yourself in terms of that and what is required from an IP perspective. Because if you do have, let's say you get to the point where you have a patent, you have the opportunity there to have another revenue stream in terms of you possibly, licensing the production of that particular product out, and you just, receive royalties. So many options there in terms of you understanding the legal aspect of things. And that's why you also would want to have an attorney on board. And that's the IP part. You also need to understand the regulations that exist and the laws within the export market as well, and how it impacts your product. Because recently, let's say you are in packaging, and we know what has taken place in terms of the ban on styrofoam, and many Caribbean countries have instituted a ban as it pertains to plastics. But there's some changes in terms of plastics right now as it pertains to green packaging. You know, do you understand or you would want to understand how that impacts you? Let's say if you are a company that is involved in packaging, if you're not producing, or even if you're importing and you're done exporting, you know, can you sell that packaging to a country like Barbados? What does their law say about the plastics? Can it be imported? The fact is, it may be you may be able to export it to Jamaica, but you may not be able to export it to Barbados because of, you know, everything that's detailed within the legislation. So you need to understand that, and that is where the legal aspect of things comes in, where you would want to have an attorney on board. Competitiveness, right? Competitiveness here, I'm referring, of course, to how competitive your product would be in the export markets. Do you have a product or service that is potentially viable within the export market? It means you really need to consider, you know, what makes your product unique, you know, how it would survive, you know, how it would compete against other products within the markets. And of course, with that, it also helps in terms of positioning. It also sort of helps in terms, not sort of, it helps in terms of the market entry method that you would possibly choose to enter your export market. And at this point, I just want to raise this, you know, my company is too small to be successful at exporting. And I just want to debunk this myth at this point, because there's no truth to this statement. The fact is, to succeed in international markets, you don't have to be a big firm. When we think about exports, we tend to conjure in our minds, you know, large company, you know, container ships and so on. But the fact is, small companies can succeed in terms of exports. And we have companies right here in Trinidad that are actually exporting, you know, less than 5 million, between 30,000 to $5 million dollars on an ongoing basis, you know, in the region. So don't be fooled, you know, and it really sets you up well if you start to think about exporting from now. Let's see, if you're now, you know, getting started in terms of your business. All right, so now I want to look at assessing your export potential, a very important aspect of export readiness, answering more questions that are crucial, because if there's no demand for what you're offering, it would be very much unwise for you to proceed as it pertains to exports. However, to determine demand, you will need to conduct market research, and I think I've spoken about that quite a bit already. And I want to underscore it yet again to say it is truly critical. Yeah. And as part of that market research, before you commence exporting, you want to be able to identify your export markets, and market research would help you do that, because you require a clear picture of the potential market that you want to, that you have targeted to get into. So researching your potential markets will include things like documentation and exports of products and services that are identical to yours in the export markets. And you can probably use that government websites and statistics and existing market research online that you could find in terms of desk research. So just proceed, you know, in the right way. And if you are unable, if you are an existing local manufacturer who has not looked at exports previously and you want to look at exports now, in terms of market research, I just want to point you in the direction of Export TT. Their research and opportunity unit is there for local manufacturers. You may be able to, you will be able to get some help as it pertains to the research data that you require to help you make the right decision as it pertains to exports, including your market entry method as well. If you're a service-based company, and let's say you are involved in fashion and you're attached to Fashion TT, you can reach out to Fashion TT, who is a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Services Industries, who they can then call upon to provide research. So we do have our local business support organizations get pretty familiar in terms of what's happening on the ground with our organizations that you can help as it pertains to exports. There's a lot of noise, and when I say noise, I mean noise in a very good way as it pertains to export developments right now in Trinidad and Tobago. Defining your product. The fact is, if your company is successful, as we saw before in the local market, it's a good chance that your product could sell in CARICOM markets, at least in those markets where similar needs and conditions exist, right? So if your product is successful, it's something that you will definitely want to look at. Another way in terms of assessing your company's potential is by examining the product distinctiveness. In terms of the important features of your product. If those features are hard to duplicate abroad, then it's likely that your product will perform well in that particular market, amidst the competition that you would find there. So product distinctiveness gives you an advantage. And I'm talking about unique distinctiveness from the point of view where you have maybe unique features such as maybe a patent, the product of the superior quality in terms of the type of raw materials that you're utilizing. You're probably the product or service, utilizing some type of cutting edge technology. And of course, there's adaptability in terms of the product. Many products and services have competitors in their targeted overseas markets, and you would want to know what that is all about. Defining your product. Sometimes your product requires training. I can give you an example in terms of that. I know of one of our largest chemical suppliers locally. Their product is exported, and in terms of a selection of a distributor, excuse me, they needed to ensure that that distributor had the capacity to actually demonstrate the product for within the hotel industry in the target markets, and be able to go in and set up the particular equipment that is required for them to utilize the product that they themselves are producing. And that's what I mean in terms of required training. So keep that in mind as well as you look at the export market. Your customer profile. How much do you really understand your customers? Do you track your customers' behavior? Do you know their buying patterns? Do you know why they use your product? What pain points that you are actually solving for them? I hope you do, because you would have developed the product, right? And just generally, you want to understand your customer profile. You want to be able to develop your buyer persona as it pertains to the various customer segments of specific customers that you want to target your product or service towards. And that is even more critical in the target market, because you're going to be facing some stiff competition within the target markets as well, the targeted export market. And I would just want to touch quickly here in terms of product modification, because sometimes we do have to modify our product. And I have the Nutella here, because Nutella actually, for some of you all who may not know, the formulation for Nutella changes in every domestic market that the product has find themselves where it's being produced. So let's say for the Latin American market, whatever the cultural nuances is in terms of taste and everything else, the product is fashioned towards that. So you're not going to find a Nutella that tastes for the Latin American markets, let's say in the Asian market, for instance. Okay, so that is how extreme sometimes product modification gets, in that you are really, laser focused in terms of the target audience that you would be exporting to. So product modification is key, and of course, it impacts in terms of funding. The other thing we want to look at is transportation. Right? How easily can your product be transported? What is the modes of transportation? Because the transport costs can actually increase the overall cost of the product. That makes it more expensive in terms of you getting the product into the market. So now your product it's no longer competitive. So it's going to be hard for you to find a partner in the potential target markets. Let's say like a distributor or a sales agent to actually sell your product, to actually move your product within the market, because you still have to factoring, their fee at the end of the day, and then the marketing of the product and so on as well. So these are some of the things you have to look at. How efficiently does the target market process incoming shipments? When you're looking at selecting a target market, you want to also focus on that. And is there any specialized containers or packaging materials needed for your product that also could, impact the cost as well, in that, just, put it on a pallet if it's a less than a container load, or, stuff it into a 20-foot container and say, okay, we can move it rather quickly. If specialized containers are needed, then you need to look at that as well.
Is she still with us, or did we lose her? We probably lost her. All right. Well, let me thank you so much for joining us, guys. This is the end of the program, but I do have some notes for you before you leave. First of all, let me thank you all so much, because you all are the true winners of what NEDCO put here today, at least the first 2 days. So thank you so much for joining us yesterday, those of you who would have joined us yesterday. And thank you so much for joining us again today as we unpack so many things in terms of exports, in terms of how you can register your business, and the importance of getting that guidance, and also how you could source funding for your business as well. So I hope that those sessions were important. Just a quick thing before we go. There were 5 key points I just wanted to share, because I, as well, as much as I'm the host, I was listening to the presentations, and I just wanted us to remember these 5 things. Stay fired up and stay fearless. I think one of the things that we realize is that we are so unafraid to just step out there and do it. I'm going to borrow a term from Nike: just do it. Enter the competition. Dream big. Remember, I think sometimes we think to limit ourselves and we want to keep ourselves in a box, but we really have no idea how much we can achieve. Put it into action. Remember, an idea is nothing if we can't put it into action. We will not reap benefits. Do it now, not next week, not next month. Go home, write down your business idea and get started. And remember, when you get an opportunity...
Are you hearing me?
Yes, Mrs. Luchang is back. Hello?
Hello? Yeah.
Hi, we were just wrapping up, but I'm going to open the floor just for 5 minutes in case anyone wants to ask a question. Mrs. Lau Chu Tong. One more time, Mrs. Lau Chu Tong.
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, I just want to open up the floor for 5 minutes just for anyone to, if they have a quick question, because we're about to end today's session and program. Let me also check in online as well quickly. Yes. So she may not be able to hear. Let me just get a mic to you quickly. And Dennis, you can go.
Yeah, I'm asking this, basically those who may be online. What about agricultural products? Scorpion pepper, things that have an expiry date. What would be the best way to transport this to other countries, regionally, internationally, and still have that market shelf life?
Mrs. Lau Chu Tong, did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. I did.
Yes.
Okay, the fact is, regulation, the potential export market. Longer shelf life also, it obviously is going to work. So you would want to produce your product for, I said, you know what is the importation of this particular product, because they're going to have regulations in terms of imports.
All right. Anything else? All right, Mrs. Lau Chu Tong, let me thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know you had some more that you wanted to say, but unfortunately we're out of time. So thank you so much, and we appreciate you joining us still for this session. Have a good evening.
Thank you everyone.
All right. A round of applause, yes? And there was one more thing I wanted to leave you with. I forgot this speaker who said it, but they said, when you get an opportunity, say yes and figure it out later. So just remember those things as we come to the second or the end of the second day of the main conference for NEDCO. I want to thank this opportunity for, well, I want to take the opportunity rather for just to thank you for being here and for also allowing me to be your host as well. You were a very attentive audience, most of you. I'm kidding, but you were a very attentive audience. I saw you taking your notes, and I also appreciate the fact that NEDCO put this together not just for you to attend this session, but also for you to network, because I was seeing people walking up to each other. I saw the exchange of business cards. I saw the exchange of information, and so I appreciate that you took the opportunity to do that as well. I look forward to working with each one of you in the future, and let me just thank you on behalf of NEDCO. Let me thank you so much for attending the session. My name is Kimberly D'Souza. Have a good evening, and please get to your home safely. Take care.